noticed that my videos tend to attract two very different types of audiences. Well, because basically I'm making lately two type of videos. One type is political, and it's mostly concerned ongoing conflict between Russia and Ukraine, because it's something that bothering me the most. And another type of videos which I'm doing lately is generic videos about differences in Russian Western mindset, mentality, culture, things like that. So people who are watching my videos about politics, about the war, knowing that I am explaining the view on the war that are not mainstream yet in the West, that I'm not supporting fueling the war and basically extending the conflict by sending more weapons to Ukraine. So I'm advocating more for what Trump is advocating, like to finish this shit off. And these kind of videos tend to attract guys that mostly, not all of them, but in their mass are very conservative, Trumpists, they are pro-lifers, and well, basically not a progressive folks, not the kind of guys who support LGBT rights, feminism, things like that. No, it's very, very conservative guys mostly. And then another type of videos where I'm talking about the differences in mentalities and culture. They tend to attract a lot of audience that are very progressive thinking, also because it's sometimes noticeable that I am very left-oriented politically, and so they agree with me on these topics about feminism, tolerance, things like that, but they absolutely hate me for my vision on the war of Ukraine. And well, speaking briefly, my vision is that Ukraine has absolutely no chances to win this war unless the direct participation of USA, which would mean World War III, and we all are fucking doomed in this case. So the logical outcome is just to stop this shit. Yes, Ukraine will have to sacrifice a lot, but this is the only reasonable way to stop people from dying for nothing. That is to speak shortly. And they hate me for this because how dare you to support Putin, because you surely a Putin supporter, you support evil against the good. And well, I explained in a lot of my political videos why it is not like that. If you are interested, you can go and check them. But in this video, I decided to comment on two comments from representatives of these two very different audiences. One guy is clearly pro-Western in the sense of being progressive, very, I imagine, feminist and things like that, and another probably pro-Russian in the sense of that it's noticeable that he almost have kind of jealousy of how the things are in Russia culturally. So I'm going to comment both of these comments and probably make haters from all of the both sides, happy or angry or emotional, and just people who are not very emotionally alienated with any of this. Well, just to know my stand, my views on these topics that are mentioned in the comments. So let's go. And let's start from a conservative comment. Luke Skyfeller is writing, I can see that you tend to prefer many of the Western ways of life. Well, I have to specify which ways of Western life I prefer. It's true. I mean, I prefer more widespread feminism in the West. I live in Western Europe, particularly in Spain, and it's absolutely true that it's much more feminist country than my previous country, Russia. I like it. I'm not going to lie. I like to be, in general, more respected as a person, not to be considered only or mostly as a sexual object or as someone who, well, pretty silly, who cannot give opinions about important topics because it's not women's business, you know? This kind of mentality is still very popular in Russia, and I hated it. I don't feel any of this here. Still, we live in more, not absolutely equal society, it's more patriarchal, but much better the situation with this than in Russia. I hate patriarchy. So yeah, in this aspect I prefer Western way of life. I also like the LGBTQ and other letters friendliness. I like the fact that people with different sexual preferences, orientation or identities are perceived as equals, are perceived as normal people and as people who deserve the same respect and treatment as the most typical heteronormative folks. This is great. Also, I like the aspect of so-called Western world, especially European ones, of the reproductive freedom, that the abortions are perceived in most of the countries as something absolutely legit, normal, accepted, and that women have the absolute right to decide what they want to do with their bodies, whether they want to give a birth or not. For me, it's super important. It shows the level of respect toward bodily autonomy and toward basically females. And in Russia, it's going worse and worse, in decline, until recently, like 2015 or even a bit later, these questions were also getting better in Russia little by little, but with the war, well, everything went to shit regarding the progressive things. And now, as some of you heard, that child-free propaganda of child-free is prohibited in Russia, which is basically, even if you just explain about your child-free life in something in a good way, it can be presented as propaganda and you could be criminally charged. So yeah, these things of the Western way, as you told, I really like. Next thing he says, or she, but I think it's a guy. But this kind of civilization is doomed to fail. There is no way around it. It's very obvious to me. Well, that this kind of civilization is doomed to fail is nothing but your subjective personal opinion. The thing is, we don't know, no one knows. And in fact, if we look into the history of the civilizations, basically each civilization, regardless of what kind of values it had, is doomed to decline. It's rising, then it has the peak of it, and then it's declining and falling. So in this regards, like, everything is doomed to fail finally. But you try to imply that specifically the progressive way of life, progressive mind, is especially evil, and that it will, this particular feature, what will determine the failure of the things. Well, it's your opinion, it's not a fact. You stated it as a fact. It's obvious to you, I have no doubts in this, but it's not obvious for a lot of people, and there's some people who would destroy you with their own arguments. So you're talking about this as a fact, it's not a fact. And we will see what is doomed to fail and what is not. The future will show, and I prefer to live in a world that would have these values that I described before, instead of coming back to the strong patriarchal society. A strong society needs strong men and patriarchy, as you may call it, but it is actually more about respect and function in society. Well, no, it's not about function in society. Check out some countries in the Western and Northern Europe. They are not what you would call strong patriarchy societies, and they are perfectly functioning, and a lot of people who live there are feeling absolutely comfortable and happy. So yeah, no, it's not about the function in society. It's more about, let me guess, that you would prefer to live in patriarchal society because you feel that you don't have enough of respect from women globally as a man in this kind of modern world. You don't like it, personally. That's why. But it's not that patriarchy is functioning better than being a feminist country, or that try to promote more equality. And saying strong society, again, what do you mean by this? Strong in the sense that most of the men will try to be macho alphas? Well, I guess. But for me, strong society is society that promotes respect, mutual respect between genders, and equality in their rights, equality in their salaries, things like that. For me, this is a strong society. No society can ever survive without respect towards men. Well, I mean, I will tell you that our society survived during centuries without respect towards women. It survived. So your statement is false. It can also perfectly survive without respect toward men, which I'm not advocating for. I don't want a society that don't respect men. I want a society that respects both men and women equally. Historically, women were not as respected as men. And that is not okay, to my opinion. So, saying that it cannot survive, well, it perfectly can survive. But I'm for mutual respect between both, and not what you probably tend to prefer, this red pill philosophy and your perceived lack of respect toward men. That is ridiculous. That's why the West is going down and will be replaced by other civilizations. Well, the West is going down for a whole lot of different factors: political, economical, cultural, and others. And it's just you try to explain this by the factor that you personally don't like, which is more a rising of feminism, tolerance, and things like that, I imagine. But finally, all of these civilizations, as I already mentioned, they are rising and they are falling down, they are going into decline. And I can assure you the Russian strong patriarchal society will also go into decline at some point, and will be replaced by a new way of seeing things, and maybe by new countries will become more dominant, and American society also will start losing its importance at some point. It's just how things are going. And I understand your personal preference to live in a patriarchal world. Well, it has benefits for you as a man. And finally, it's about the kind of values that are subjective and personal for each person. You prefer this, and I prefer to live in a society that would respect women equally, and that would defend their rights equally with men. So it's ultimately about choices and preferences of what kind of society you like or not. But it's not because of you don't like something, that's why the civilization is going down because of this. Well, it's your opinion, it's very, very debatable. Now let's go to a pro-Western commenter and let's see what he is writing, or she. Russian women are expected to behave like male sex fantasies. Well, of course it is a very big generalization, but there is part of the truth in this statement, from my humble opinion. And also I would add some, how it's called, matiz in English. Well, I would add something, basically that Russian women expected to behave as male sex fantasies while they are young and beautiful. But as soon as this period is more or less over, like when a woman in Russia is married with kids and everything, she is expected to behave already not like a sex fantasy for men, because, well, with the age somehow she is disregarded from the attractive sexual market by men and by women. That's cultural misogyny that we have in Russia. And she is expected to behave as a completely non-egoistic caregiver. She is expected to take care of men, of kids, grandkids, and basically be a servant. Again, it's brutal generalization and exaggeration as well, I would admit, because it's not applied to absolutely every family, every woman, every man in Russian society, but it is quite mainstream, I would say, unfortunately. It just shows how pathetic and insecure Russian men are. Well, those are strong words, and honestly I disagree with this. I think it's not about them being pathetic and insecure. It's just about how historically the culture and mentality in Russia was developing. If you are born into a family where you, since the very early ages, basically are taught that just because you are a guy, you are entitled to this, and women have to be always beautiful for you, they have to look at you as the head of the family, always as the main decision maker, and basically be kind of servants. That's what you become. It becomes part of your identity. Very few guys can escape this mentality because we are shaped by our society mostly. So it's not about being pathetic, it's just you was lucky or unlucky to be born in a certain place, in a certain family, surrounded by a certain type of people and media. And that's who you become. And then about the insecurity, well, this kind of guys, it's true that they become very insecure if they meet with a woman that is not typical Russian woman who accepted the rules of the game, the patriarchal rules of the game. When they meet Western-minded woman, or even a woman from the West, for real, they often feel insecure because they don't know how to behave. They often feel less appreciated that they think they deserve. In this case, yes. But as you can understand, very rarely they meet with this kind of independent, strong women, so mostly they don't have this problem. Russian houses are hotter because their gas is cheap and nobody cares about the environment. Well, it's true that having cheap gas is really contributing to Russian people being able to heat their houses well, but it's not the only reason. Another reason is that Russian houses often are of a much better quality than here in Europe. I will not say about the Northern Europe, or Central. I'm talking about countries like Spain, where I am, and Italy. It's just most of the buildings that I've been are shite. They don't keep the energy, they don't keep the temperature well, so you have to heat much more to have something acceptable. And you are talking about not caring about environment, and please tell this to the Southern European countries, because having this kind of energy inefficient buildings is absolutely anti-ecological. It's not caring about environment, because you basically burning gas and burning electricity very ineffective in an ineffective way. So you tell me about this. But also it's a fair point that in general in Russia people still care less about the environment than in Western Europe, well, because of abundance of resources. So the point is still valid, partially, but with nuances. Winter in the West is now colder because our corrupt politicians can no longer profit easily from Russian bribes to buy polluting gas. Mostly, well, it's not very clear wording, but so you accept that your Western politicians finally are not such an amazing thing either. Well, surprise, surprise. And not exactly, I'm not exactly in agreement with this. Now, Europe especially has problems with heating houses because of expensive electricity, specifically because Europe kicked itself by reducing the intake of Russian cheap energy because of ideological reasons, thinking that they can perfectly fine and comfortable live without cheap Russian energy, and well, the reality is what it is. It's hard to have a great economy without the access to relatively cheap resources and energy from Russia. Well, the choice is European. If they want to keep it like that, smiling is normal because life is better if you are free. Well, it's about my comments where I was saying that in Russia people less open to smile in public to people that they don't know well. Well, I mean, it's idealizing a lot. So you imply that the West is so free that people are smiling. I don't think it's about freedom. It's historically, I think, yes, Europe was quite free and democratic, but right now, I mean, it's not completely true. You are not living in completely free countries here in Europe. I think in USA it's also quite problematic. You cannot say certain things openly. There is a censorship. It's might be softer than in Russia, I accept that, but it's not complete freedom of the speech. I just remember the pandemic times. Certain type of scientists who were not aligned with the main pushed narratives about the jabs and things like that, they were absolutely harshly censored. Right now with the Russia-Ukraine war, it's also mainstream media, they basically not allowing, or were not allowing before. Right now with Trump we will see a certain type of opinions. So you tell me about freedom. Well, West is not such a free space or countries anymore. I wonder if ever they were. I think our freedom is always limited. But, well, yes, in Russia, depends what topic you are talking about, the freedom of speech limited even harder, yeah. Nothing to smile about in Russia. Well, I mean, that's clearly exaggeration or projections or whatever. It's true that after the fall of the Soviet Union, the economic situation in Russia was really complicated, and most of the people were struggling. The life really was hard, much harder than in the West for majority of people, except a few percentage of oligarchs that appeared and nationalized, no, in the contrary, privatized the public property. Nowadays, the economical situation got quite better or a bit better, depends what you think. And of course, it's not true that there's nothing to smile about in Russia. There are a lot of people who are living quite okay, and they are satisfied with the level of life that they are having. And especially if you are okay with this new political, patriotic way of thinking, this narrative, if you are okay with traditional family values, call them like that, you can be pretty happy in Russia. So the life is harder there for most still, I think, although there are opportunities and there are happy people. Majority or not, well, depends. I think people in Soviet Union were happier than people in Russia, and I don't like where the cultural aspect is going, the direction that it's took in Russia. But saying that just absolutely nothing to smile about, well, I mean, people keep living, people keep trying to be happy with bigger or lesser result. Men in the West are expected to be human, not macho fakes. That is, I would say, true from my perception, from my experience of life in Europe, and that is what I really like about the so-called Western way of life. I really like that here guys are not expected to be this alpha whatever, the only way of, the only model of how the perfect man should be, this patriarchal model. They just expect to be human, and I absolutely love that. I really, well, not despise, but it looks to me so unnatural when guys are trying to pretend and to be this alpha thing when they are not. Some of them naturally are this kind of leaders and they create this kind of charisma, but some of them are not, and that's absolutely okay. You don't have to push yourself to show this macho whatever. I'm, for example, personally, I'm not attracted to this macho type, even the natural born ones, not my cup of tea. And that's very sad that in Russia and post-Soviet countries still it's expected from boys, guys and men. And by the way, we have also met totally gay guys, way tougher than any pathetic macho fakes. I have no doubts on that. I also have met a lot of gay people here, which would break all the schemes of Russian people who have certain stereotypes about gay guys, so totally. It is about freedom instead of bullshit delusion. I'm all for a freedom to be who you want, to express yourself how you want. I'm all in for that. But I have a feeling and some fear that West, Europe, USA are now shifting a little bit or quite a bit away from real freedom. And I don't know how the society will change, but it seems like we are living in quite a turbulent times. I would not dare to predict how the world would look in 5 years, and we will see. Anyway, I wish you to have a good day, night, or morning, whatever you have, and I'll see you in the next video.